Hello, dance people, and welcome to David's Dance Podcast. I'm your host, David Evans. We have a bit of a shorter podcast today, solo podcast. It's just a few kind of topics I wanted to cover with you guys. Some crazy news that's come up. That breaking, b-boying, breakdancing, as some might know it, is now in the 2024 Olympics happening in Paris. So, for those who don't know, breaking was trialed in the Youth Olympics. I think it was 2 years ago, and that went really well. Was really well received, and so now the decisions come through to include it as like a full sport in the Paris 2024 games, which is kind of like it's absolute madness, really, in like all the b-boy and break-in forums and Facebook groups are just like lit up with loads of breaking memes, and everyone debating what this means for the b-boy and breaking community, really, and what this means for the art form, what this means for the dance. Is this the right step forward as a culture? All these kind of big questions. Where it sort of came from the Olympic side is that the Olympics was really wanting to update their sports, basically, because they had a lot of sports that are quite kind of out of date, and they needed some newer sports that are going to appeal to younger audiences, to increase viewership, to increase the relevance of the Olympics games. I mean, to be honest, how often have we watched the Olympics and seen sports that were like, this is cool, but I have never even heard of this. Like, I didn't even know you could go skiing for ages, shoot something at a target, and then keep on skiing, and that was like a sport. Like, that's just kind of crazy that people out there, I guess, it's called a Norwegian drive-by. It's these people just rocking up on skis, popping off a few rounds and off they go. And apparently in the Nordics and Canada, that's a sport. It's dangerous, but you see people just in those dangerous neighborhoods. You hear a few shots go off, and then all you hear is the soft sound of some skis pushing into the distance. Anyway, it's just, yeah, it's kind of crazy. So it is good that the Olympics, for them, that they're kind of branching out into these new sports is really dope. I think what it means for the community is really interesting. I think my opinion, and this is just, my humble opinion, is generally speaking that it's positive. So I think the main difficulty that helps with is just raising the profile of breaking again, because I've really felt this in recent years that b-boying is dying in the UK. So I really got into b-boying in a really big way when I was at university. So I went to University of Reading, and while I was there, I helped run the breakdance society. I created a jam called Style Never Stops Jam, which I ran for 2 years. And then when I left, that was run for another 2 years. But then, like, I know in recent years that society's died out. And then I'm now based in Guildford, and that was, a good little bubble of b-boying when I was at university at Reading. And now that closed down as well. And all these like b-boy spots and b-boy groups and crews that were based in the universities, like when I was learning and kind of coming up, are now gone. Those communities just fizzled out. And it's kind of a case of, each year they go, oh, do we want to go through the effort to be a society and get more people, and just kind of a loss of interest, really, which I think is such a shame, because the crazy thing about break-in is when people see it, when I go and train with some guys locally, and when we go and do it out in public, people walk by and they're like, oh, that's amazing. People come up and talk to us and like, oh, this is really cool. I get kids when I train by myself, especially. I get kids come up to me all the time and just like want to join in and do handstands. And so it's one of those things that when people see breaking and b-boying, like they react to it in like a really visceral way, which is so awesome. But it's just not that as well known anymore. You know, it's been around for 40 years now, but it was really at its kind of height of popularity, I think, in the public domain in the 80s. And now it's really kind of hard just from like a marketing point of view to get people interested in it. Like I know when I've taught classes, the easiest classes for me to teach were from like a marketing point of view and getting people along was my salsa classes and like hip hop and street dance because people are just more aware of these things. They're maybe also a little bit more accessible. People aren't as intimidated by these styles. Breaking is very demanding, and you can do salsa for like a month or two and look like decent on the dance floor. And same with street dance and pop in and those styles. If you like commit to it for like a month or two, like you're gonna look okay dancing. Like whereas breaking, you'll do it for 6 months and you'll still look rubbish. Like it's a real commitment. You gotta be kind of in it and you gotta really enjoy it. Um, I think for a lot of people, that's kind of a bit of a struggle. That's definitely a barrier. But I think just the awareness, you know, it's not like the hot new dance that all the kids are dancing these days. And they're seeing a lot of like street dance kind of commercial choreo clips to, you know, Justin Bieber. And they're like, oh, I want to do that. And that's great. But I feel like breaking's definitely suffered just from like an awareness point of view of just kids coming up wanting to do it. So I think in terms of raising the profile of breaking again, I think that's really positive, and I'm looking forward to maybe starting some local breaking classes again and just seeing what the interest is, because I think we will probably see an uptake in interest in the coming years as it becomes a little bit more in the mainstream mindset again. So from that point of view, I think it's really positive, and I know it's doing well in different parts of the world. In some parts of the world, breaking is growing and thriving. You know, I think especially parts of Africa and Asia. And actually, if you do a Google has this thing where you can track how much people are searching terms over time. It's a free service, and you can, if you look at breaking or b-boying and you search for it as a term and watch how much people are searching it, it has decreased pretty much everywhere except in like North Africa and parts of Africa and Asia, like Korea and stuff. In those areas, searches for breakdancing are going up in the past like couple of years. So it's this kind of thing where in some globally in some areas it's in decline, in other areas it's seeing more growth. You know, and we're seeing that reflected in like some of the dope like North African b-boys and obviously dope Korean b-boys, and b-boys coming out of Asia. Um, yeah, that kind of shift where, you know, like b-boying started in the Bronx and on the world stage, you're really not seeing the Americans dominant in the breaking scene anymore from like a competitive point of view, which is kind of crazy, really. So you're kind of seeing a shift. I think there is a difficulty with people and being on decline, and it just needing something to kind of kickstart it. Um, just from that kind of awareness point of view, but it also needs people in the b-boying community, in the breaking community, who are gonna put in the groundwork, put in the grassroots work to grow this dance. You know, I think part of why like ballet did so well is not because ballet has big companies, you know, it has the Royal Opera House and things like that, you know, English National Ballet. Yes, these things contribute to the growth of ballet. But a big part of why ballet is still so relevant today is because in a lot of villages and small towns around the UK and around the world, there are ballet teachers who just teach like local ballet schools and teach it to a decent level. And, are they going to be famous dancers? Maybe they've already had dance careers and they're like retired. That's not a super glamorous job. But it is so key. And actually, that's where most ballet dancers start, is just in like, it's the Billy Elliot story, right? I mean, I know that's not a real story, but for a lot of people who got into ballet, that was kind of their story, like just starting in a rural village scene, and that just being something that's available, and that giving them enough to be able to grow and want to go after bigger things. So I think we do need more of those local teachers. And so, yeah, just massive shout out to. I don't see it a lot. I do see a lot of selfishness in the breaking community, and it frustrates me to no end. But I just really want to give a shout out to the breakers who do give back, to those who do run the jams, to those who run classes and try to grow other dancers and other individuals that aren't stingy with the knowledge. And if you don't know something, they don't berate you for it. They just help you. I think those are the people that are ultimately gonna carry this culture forward. I think, yeah, I can't emphasize how important that actually is. And it's not glamorous, but it's so essential. And without those people, like this culture will absolutely not survive. So yeah, so I think, okay, Olympics are really good from that point of view. Um, I think in terms of giving it some official recognition, it's good. I don't think it's necessarily going to bring as much money in to breaking as people think it will. Because for a lot of small time sports, like some Olympic athletes lose money and get into debt going into the Olympics. Like actually, it totally depends on your sport. And it totally depends on the country that you're based in. If you're in a country that's like, we really want to get behind you, this sport is important to us, we say there's potential here, this is an area in which we could win at the Olympics. I see Korea maybe doing that. Like they'll invest in some facilities, maybe some training stuff. Like I think that's where we'll see the biggest help, and the biggest investment is more on a country by country basis, with some countries hopefully starting to invest in better training facilities, better training programs, like a nutritionist, maybe like a physiotherapist, sort of facilities like that to help breakers prepare like athletes and train like athletes. But in terms of increasing the money coming in, I don't think it's really going to make much of a difference. There's plenty of Olympic athletes as it is that have their own flights to go to the Olympics, and they give their heart and their soul, and then they come out of it, and then they have nothing. Like maybe they switch from away from academics to do that, and they come out and they're like, I have this gold medal, but like I'm not able to build a career out of this, to get some money out of this, unless I just go into teaching, or go back into my academics and go back and get my degree. So I don't really think it's going to bring more money in, but I hope it brings more, and I think it will bring a bit more facility. So I think that's one positive aspect. Um, One concern from the community has been, will it just become gymnastics, and will it kill the growth of the dance? And that is a real concern of mine. I think the judging system is pretty good. It has a ways to go, but it's pretty good. Let me share it with you guys. So the judging system, we have the judging system that was used at the Youth Olympics. The Trivium. I'm probably not saying that right. Trivium. The Trivium value system. So this is from an article on Medium by Jason Pugh. And yeah, so that breaks down into judges looking at three categories: body, soul, and mind, and judging on those three categories. And within those, there's two subcategories. So under body, there is technique and variety. Under soul, there is performativity and musicality. Under mind, there is creativity and personality. This was developed by a lot of important breakers in the scene, who are quite well respected. There are maybe some tweaking and definitely some room for debate. I think in general this is a good move away from the way a lot of break-in battles are judged. There's because so often you go to like a battle, and then the three judges at the end are like give their decision, and you really have no concept of like how you did. And you go up to the judges after and you're like, hey, what can I work on? Like, you're doing good, just keep on going. And you're like, great, cool. Like, what am I meant to do with that advice? Or at least with this, like if you were like a breaker, you could go away and see, oh, okay, I got like a really good score on technique, a good score on musicality. I got a bad score on performativity and a low score on like personality, high score on creativity. Okay, I need to go away and work on my performativity. I need to go away and work on. So it gives you a way to understand where your score is actually coming from, and it gives you an explanation, and it creates accountability in the judging. I mean, how many times have like breakers gone to jams, and like the same crew that hosts the jam and has like their crew members judging it, like surprise, surprise, that same crew win the jam. And it's like, and sometimes it is fair enough. Like they genuinely, everyone's like, yeah, they won that. But sometimes you go to this and you're like, And so I think this kind of just judging system is really good just to create accountability and understanding where the scores come from, and also that it keeps it from being focused just too much on gymnastics and on just moves, because only like 1/3 of this is like moves, and even that is 20% technique. So I think that's fantastic. My personal only criticism of this system is that I think musicality is only 13 and a third percent. I think that's pretty low. One of the things that b-boying struggles with a lot is musicality. And like I watch high level break-in battles, and sometimes these cats aren't even like on beat, or they're doing just really basic stuff like musically, or you can see that they're throwing combos, but there's kind of just a sense of them doing their set and no real listening to the music that's going on. And you hear all these OGs like, listen to the music, man. We're a dance form. You gotta listen to the music, and then go out and just do like some whack two-step offbeat. And you're like, what? What? Are we like watching the same thing? It's crazy to me. So for me, I'm like, this is a dance form. So the musicality, I think should be probably more important. I would have swapped that around for soul, and I would have had musicality be like 20% and performativity be like 13.33%, because it's so important that this is a dance and it remains a dance, and that you leave room for responses, organic responses to the music that get people away from just doing long pre-prepared sets. Yes, people will still prepare combos, but I think this is just generally a good thing with b-boying is like when you're practicing, like don't put combos together that are more than like 3 moves. And that really is like an entry move, the big move, and like your transition out of it. But as soon as your sequences become too long, then you're not leaving room for the music. And that's just good advice for just improvising in general. I used to do that for salsa. One of the issues with salsa, the way salsa is taught, and I don't teach this way, is that you go to a salsa class and they teach you like a long routine that is move, 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 move. And then they're like, great, now go and, freestyle. And when you're a beginner, you go out and you're trying to remember these long routines and you're doing these long sequences, and it totally takes you out of the music. Like, and you can't remember that many moves, you know, in a string. And so you're not responding organically. So what I would do instead, and what I encourage my students to do, is just pick like, we'll do a routine, but pick like one step and just work that into your freestyle, into your improvisation when you're salsaing with a partner. And usually the way that I teach it is, rather than just doing a routine that's just a random string of moves together, what I do is I pick like one move or one concept and we do it like 5 different ways, so that you are able to then, and we work on different ways to get into it and out of it, so that you as a dancer actually understand how you can incorporate this into your own style, into your own way of moving, in a way that actually makes sense and is, you need to atomize it, it needs to be sort of bite-sized enough that you can sort of like just pop it in where you need it. Because really classes should only be a small fraction of what you're actually trying to do when you're building a style. So yeah, where was I going with all that? Yeah, so I think the system is good. I think that's really going to help. There's a broader concern that I have, which is that I think this is going to continue the emphasis on competition as the center, like tournament style competitions as the center of b-boying. Like, bear in mind, when like breaking started, people would just go and just battle other kids for the sake of battling them. And there was a lot more just call outs, just going over to people and being like, you want to battle? Let's battle. There wasn't necessarily these like elimination style tournaments where it's all about not winning the battle, but like winning the tournament. And if you didn't win the tournament, then you're whack and you're at the bottom, and that creates like a real defeatist mentality. It's and there's nothing wrong with those competitions, but the problem is like breaking is becoming just those competitions. Then the jams that I've had the most fun at were the ones where maybe the tournament was good, but the ciphers were lit up. And those were always the jams I remember the most, where the ciphers were really fun, really energetic, a lot of exchanges, some really good call outs. That's the kind of stuff that you see when you're like, oh, this is really fun. One of the issues for me is that breaking competitions is just one aspect of the pie that really makes up breaking culture. And it's a really important aspect of it. And it's great that it's growing, but we just got to be careful that it just doesn't become the whole pie. Because when that happens, or when competition like that becomes the center of a dance culture, dances die. I'm like dead serious about this. Look at what happened to ballroom. I think this is, when I think about ballroom versus salsa, this is the perfect example. Because, you know, back in like the pre-war up to kind of like the 50s, people used to just go out and do ballroom and dance together, and they could actually improvise ballroom and not necessarily do a set dance. Whereas today, all the ballroom classes and ballroom things that I know about Nobody just goes out and on a Friday night and it's like, yo, let's go and do some ballroom. Let's go and waltz. It just doesn't happen. People go to a class maybe and learn like a set ballroom dance with set steps. And then if they want to really push themselves in that dance, they go and do competitions and they create steps for these competitions, and the dance form is then set. It's no longer alive, it's no longer growing, it's no longer changing. You're just saying, you're just codifying, you're setting it in stone. And as soon as you do that, it dies out. Now compare this with salsa. Salsa, I think, has a pretty healthy balance because at the core of the salsa culture is just going out and freestyling salsa with people. Going to a salsa club or to a salsa event, whatever, and just walking up to strangers and going, "Hey, you want to dance?" Or friends or whatever, saying, "Hey, you want to dance?" And they say yes or no. And then you go and you dance and you create a dance together that's improvised on the spot that you've never done before. And it's all fresh. And because of that, there's loads of beautiful styles, variety in the salsa scene. It's constantly evolving and developing as a dance. It's a living, breathing culture. And then to supplement that, they have competitions where you can also push yourself. And they have shows often at these like salsa, you go to a salsa club often, they'll, like midnight, they'll have like 20, 30 minutes of shows, which are awesome. And you get to see salsa being pushed from like a technical point of view. But those things are not the center of the culture. And I think salsa is great because it keeps the organic expression of the dance at the center of its culture. And that's why I think is going to be important for b-boying to do, because I think if it focuses too much on competition and too much on judging criteria that are too strict or getting down into move sets or like, that kind of specificity, then what you end up at is at a dance form that's dead, that ceases to evolve, ceases to grow, ceases to find room for more expression. And what you end up seeing is, in order to compete, you see dancers just becoming more and more the same. And you see them doing more and more preparation and less dancing and expression. It's more about getting the numbers, getting all of that than just jamming in front of some people and like vibing together, becomes about, oh, I won that competition instead of, oh, I smoked that dude, which is, don't get me wrong, like battling is like such a massive part of the culture, but it was just like you wanted to battle that dude because you wanted to battle that dude. It was so much more of like a street mentality of like, yeah, let's battle and calling each other out rather than just like, oh, I'm gonna go out and just do my thing. Yeah, so that's something I worry about with breaking, is that we're gonna see a sort of a seizing off of the culture and becoming like more and more concrete and less organic. And I think but ultimately that's not about me being against the Olympics. I'm for it. My main takeaway is that we have a lot of work to do as a culture, and that there's a lot of other things in other areas that we need to fix if this dance form is going to really not survive, if it's going to survive, period, but also if it's going to thrive and continue to grow, and be the expression that we love, that expression of moving, grooving with people, getting down, doing just crazy stuff, just for like the heck of it. Yeah, so that's what I hope, and that's what I look forward to. Want to give a shout out to Shivangi, who won our competition for 50 pounds worth of free rehearsal space. So super excited to follow up with her and share that. We really wanted to support some dance artists during this time. We know it's a tough time during COVID. So we just wanted to support other artists by running a competition like that. And we're super excited for her for that. Let me know what you guys think about breaking being in the Olympics. What do we need to work on as a dance culture? And if you're from another dance style, how would you feel if your style, if that was salsa, if that was contemporary, if that was hip hop? Like by hip hop, I mean like jack swing or like street or whatever, locking, popping. How would you feel if that style was in the Olympics? Would you feel that that would be a positive way forward, or would you see that as like a step back? Let me know in your comments below, or email us at davidsdancepodcast@gmail.com, or hit us up on Instagram at Dance Across Mediums. I just love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, it'd be good to have that conversation. Besides that, we'll see you all next week. Thanks very much.